Hey homeschoolers, I'm Melissa Webb, former full-time classroom teacher and homeschool mom turned full-time business CEO and encourager to homeschool families everywhere. If you are looking for a place to be encouraged and inspired, you have found the perfect podcast. Homeschooling is a work of heart is truly the perfect place to start. So welcome. Let's jump in. Hello, friend. Hey, I am so excited this week. I'm going to introduce a new friend to our outstanding and, dare I say, exceptional homeschooling community over here at Homeschool is a Work of Heart. And I have to tell you, it is October officially, and my teacher's mind clicks in and tugs at my memory bank because did you know it's Emergency Awareness Month? Oh, yes. This is the time of year when we would always study and learn and practice fire drills, earthquake drills in California, and how to handle health emergencies at home. So I feel like the timing is perfect for introducing Cheryl Daley. Cheryl Daley is a homeschool mama to one, but her little 2-year-old is not far behind, as you'll hear in this week's interview. She is a tremendous podcaster. I love her podcast. You have to check it out. It's the Homeschool How To. I'll link all of the things. She's also the author of a picture book for kids called Let's Talk Emergencies, a guide to life-saving lessons in kid-friendly language. And I love the title. I especially love this subtitle. But most of all, it's such an important topic. And again, you'll hear more about that in the interview. I will say that while this week's episode is sure to inspire you to teach emergency preparedness in your home and make sure that your kids know what to do in the case of an emergency, you're going to find that there are some valuable resources. Again, I'll link everything in the show notes. But there is another important takeaway that I want you to clasp with both of your hands. You, my friend, have many purposes in this life of yours. Growing up, I remember being told, got to figure out your purpose, as if there's one singular thing that we're supposed to do. But there are many purposes, and homeschooling is one of them for you, no doubt. But there may also be an author inside of you waiting to come out. It's not just your child who's supposed to be working on his or her writing. Anyway, I hope you are inspired by Cheryl today, knowing that she was able to pursue a personal passion of hers, which actually took longer than she anticipated, but she still did it in conjunction with all the other things that she was doing in her life. So please just pay attention to anything that may spur you into dreaming and imagining what else is out there waiting for you to create and to find or to explore. Just lean in, sit back, and take a listen. And speaking of listening, here's my interview with Cheryl. Introduce a new amazing woman, mother, homeschooler to our group, and her name is Cheryl Daley. I met Cheryl actually through Instagram. So if people are like, I don't know that you can really meet real people through the socials, you can. We have connected and learned quite a bit about each other. I'm so excited to introduce all of you to her today. She has written and now published a children's book that I want her to talk about and tell you a little bit about. Welcome, Cheryl. I am so happy to have you here.
Oh, Melissa, thank you so much for having me on. This is going to be a real fun day.
It is. It is. So you have written, it's your first book, right? It's the first thing you've written was a children's book. Is that correct?
Yes. I had been working on a memoir for, probably 20 years now. And I just never have actually put it all together in like book format. So I thought maybe a children's book would be easier. But now that I've done that, I don't know that the children's book is any easier.
No, right? They all have their own challenges for sure. If you would, why don't you tell us the title of your book, a little bit about your book? I really want to know what inspired you to write on this particular topic. It's about handling emergency situations. So I'm right away going to tell everybody you need to get this book. This is a great conversation starter. And I just think it offers a lot of accountability for parents to even make sure that their kids know these important things. But give us a little bit of background.
So I have been homeschooling my son for a year now. My podcast is where I just interview homeschooling families to learn all the ways people are homeschooling. So that's been really fun. I started out with one of my reading curriculums with him, all about reading, the pre-reading, and the good and the beautiful math. So as we're going through these, it would ask occasionally, what is mom's phone number? And I was like, oh, that's a really good thing to know. Should I be going over this with him often? Because it asks maybe 3-4 times throughout the curriculum. But I mean, learning now we have like an area code plus 7 other digits. That's a lot for a 5-year-old to memorize. So it does need to be done a little bit more consistently. And then I started thinking, gee, what about other things like our address? And, does he know how to call 911? Like, I'm 40 years old. I grew up with a landline phone in my house. So if there were an emergency, I always knew where it was, and you pick it up and then you just call the 3 digits and somebody helps you. And they could track that back to your location. So given the landline phone, a cell phone, you're not always at the location of the cell phone owner. So I started thinking, wow, things are a lot different now than they were back in the day. And is our homeschool curriculum really going over, making us homeschooler parents aware of what we should be teaching our children? So I reached out to a couple of teachers and asked what goes on in the school? What are we missing? And they said there's really not a lot of that. They expect the parents to do this with their children. And other than, they do fire safety week, which we do with homeschool too. You go visit a fire department, but that's really it. Above and beyond that, it is the parent's responsibility to go over this information with their children. But the thing is that talked about on back to school night? Is there a pamphlet that goes home that says, this is what school's covering, this is what we expect parents to cover? I mean, in today's day and age where parents are just so busy with working and the sports and every other activity going on, we almost don't even have the time to sit and contemplate what else should we be going over. And like I said before, it has changed since we were kids. So I started talking to cops and, my brother-in-law is a retired police officer, asking them, what is it that you found that kids should know in emergencies and maybe didn't know? And I was surprised. He told me that most kids have no idea what their parents' first and last names are. And again, now we're getting into time where a lot of parents aren't together, in the unfortunate situation that they're not. Now a kid has to know maybe mom's last name is different from my last name, and then dad's last name might be the same as my last name, or, so it's a little bit more complicated than 40, 60 years ago. We have to kind of roll with the trends and understand that. And does a child know their own first and last name? Because, we're used to calling them kind of nicknames, this and that, but do they know that information? Do they know their address? Do they know their phone number? And most importantly, do they know how to call 911 from a locked cell phone? And not even just mom's locked cell phone, but what if they're with grandpa and something happens to grandpa? Do they know how to call 911, which they can do from a locked cell phone? So that got me on the ball of, let's put this in a children's book that is fun, but also gives parents the information that, they really need to be giving their kids. And then I added in, as I got writing, like what to do during a fire. I also added in the stranger danger and the internet safety, which is something that we didn't have to deal with when I was a kid. But you do see, child trafficking is a real thing. I worked for the government. My agency dealt with trafficking all the time. It's definitely out there. And what will happen often is you'll get talking in, I mean, chat rooms. I don't think that's really a thing anymore, but even video games, I'd never realized that strangers can chat to your children just during a video game in certain situations. Now, everybody has it set up differently, but that's a possibility. I had no idea before this because I don't play video games, but so that's a thing. And obviously there's TikTok and Snapchat and all this where people can claim to be someone that you know or someone that you want to know. And it might not be that cute 12-year-old girl that says she lives around the corner who has, just tons of extra video games or extra makeup that, oh, I just have so much I'm looking to get rid of. How about after your parents go to sleep, you just meet me outside the door and I'll just drop it all off to you. Little things like this where they lure us. And it happens, unfortunately. So I tried to put that information in the book in the lightest possible way where it doesn't give exactly what it's talking about, but it opens the discussion for the child to ask mom or dad or grandma or grandpa, their guardian, well, what do they mean by this? Well, why is that a wolf and he's actually wearing a sheep's costume? And it just lends itself to open the conversation. I also added in about gun safety, which happened when my son said to me that he doesn't need Nerf guns anymore because we have a shooting range in the backyard and he knows how to shoot. I said, oh, no, 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 no. No. All right, there's a distinction. So, we think in our minds, well, yeah, you're not going to be crazy enough to confuse the two. But my little, at the time, he was 4 or 5. I said, okay, this is something that we have to put into. And talking to cops about what are kids supposed to do when they see a gun. And yeah, so just putting in things that we take for granted that everyone would just know, but putting it in a way that the children can understand. And I tried to make it light. My son had a hard time with distinguishing a 6 from a 9. So in calling 911, I wanted him to solidify in his mind what a 9 looked like. So we hid a 9 and a 1 and a 1 in each illustration so that my illustrator, Cheryl Daley, she's a retired NYPD officer. So that was super fun. We're both Cheryls. So we have that hidden in. So it brings a little bit of light. And then, of course, the little sister, like we have in our house, the 2-year-old girl, who's always causing trouble in the background. So whether she's created what potential emergencies she's creating in the back while the parents are trying to teach their son about how to handle emergency situations, it tries to just bring a little bit of light and uplifting to this book that might have some heavy concepts.
I love it. And so I was fortunate enough to get to read the book. And just like you said, you took serious topics, but you presented it in a way that is going to engage and interest the little learner. It could be a great book to sit with mom and go through it and just ask those questions like, did you know that? Here, let me get my phone. Let's just practice. What would that look like? I think it's a teaching tool. I think it's an entertaining book that children would read multiple times, right? We always want kids to read the same book over and over and over again. It's how they get better at reading. But at the same time, it's a tool. It's an educational resource. And that was one of the things I loved about it was the layers. Much like an onion, it was like every time I turned a page, I was like, well, that was a great idea to include that. And I turned a page. That was a great idea to include that. And you hit on so many things that are relevant to today. And I just commend you. I think it's an important topic, but I think the way that you presented it, the illustrations are fun. Like you said, it's not a scary book. Some of the things, if kids really understood the dangers of the world we live in today, it could really frighten a child. And yet we need to inform them. And you did that. You did just that. Like for one, I think parents reading it with their children will be like that little wake up call. Like, oh, these are really valid points that we need to consider. At the same time, it's entertaining for the child audience. So good. I absolutely love it. What challenges, I'm curious, did you encounter when you were writing the book that you didn't anticipate? So, and I ask this question because I work with a lot of homeschool moms, and I am telling you, homeschool moms have some of the best story ideas. I think our children inspire us. We read a lot of books with them. We see what engages their imagination. We watch what they're doing, and we're like, we could make a story out of that. Like that's how my story, how the ladybug got her spots, came to be. I have another friend, Chris, who has been working on a chapter book for older kids. And hers is Galaxy Walkers, I think. I'll link to it. And it's taken her 7 years to put it together. She had said she just loved reading stories to her kids. So then she started writing a story and would read it to her kids. And I think that a lot of these homeschool moms who have these great ideas need to know it is possible to homeschool and to still have your own personal goals and passions and achieve great things. And you have done that. You're an example, homeschooling and a children's author at the same time. So that obviously presented some challenges. Do you mind sharing some of that and how you dealt with that, both with like your thinking and then practical things too?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I thought that writing the children's book would be like, okay, we're just going to write it. It's going to take a month. Somebody's going to draw it up and then poof, it's on Amazon. Yeah, it doesn't go that smoothly because you get your work out there and then you have people read it and then they have critiques, which is wonderful. But you're like, oh, yeah, I didn't think of that. And okay, that might not come across how I thought it did in my head. And then I sent it over to my illustrator, who I chose her because I loved the work that I saw her do. And, she was like, oh, I've never done anything like this before. What do you want on these pages? And I did have an idea of what I wanted on each page because it kind of modeled after my family anyways and how I wanted everything to connect. Luckily, she was so willing to work with me on making what I saw on each page come to life. But, there would be back and forth between us like, oh, I love how you did this, but it's not how I saw it. Can you change this? So, and you have to give them time. These are all hand drawn. I really wanted to make sure that the illustrations, I know it's so easy right now to go on and do like that graphic design stuff. Like Canva has a lot of cool things and there's a lot of hard work that goes into that too. But I just really love just the hand-drawn illustration. So it took her a lot of time to do that. Yeah. So as I'm waiting, in the process of me waiting, I actually made an activity book to go hand in hand with this book. So that's on Amazon as well to kind of reinforce, what the address is, what mom and dad's phone numbers are, what their names are, little mazes and stuff, word jumbles. So, I did that, but I guess some other formatting of the book was learning a whole new beast of that. I guess I never really thought about how it would format. I thought, well, it just all comes together, right? I write the words, she does the drawing, and then it's together. No. So formatting it so that the words are visible and in a spot that they look good in, that they pop. The font, just, there's thousands, probably millions of fonts out there. Finding one that works for your book and is easily readable and making sure that it's got either, a color behind it where you can see it. Because we've all been that parent reading to our kids when like we don't have the lights fully on in the room and you're like, I can't see what that says. And it's because they put black text with a dark background and you don't think about that sort of stuff. But yeah, so all those little things. And once you think you have everything all together, you have someone else read the book and then they have their input and then you're back to the drawing board and then learning how to actually get it. I self-published just because I didn't really feel like having the rejection from the of the publishing agencies. But, it's really, that takes a lot of time. And like you said, with your book, you are querying them. They a lot of them won't talk to you until you have an agent, and an agent won't want to work with you unless they know that you're going to consistently produce children's books. And I was kind of just like, this is something my son and I are doing as part of his homeschool as well. He's seeing me be creative. I'm asking for his input. I'm reading it to him, asking what he likes about what he doesn't. What does he like about the pictures? Does it all make sense to him? I kind of just was like, let's just self-publish. But that was learning a lot on my own as well. It wasn't as easy as I thought it would be. So, and especially getting those final things published, you have to do, if it's a paperback you can do that with KDP Amazon, but hardcovers, if it's under a certain amount of pages, which most children's books would be, that cannot be hardcovered printed with KDP. So you have to print those with Ingram Spark and getting the ISBNs separate and then doing an ebook. And then now I'm at the point where it's promotion and it's like, oh my goodness, what do I have to learn about the promotional part? I wrote it. Why doesn't the whole world just
Right.
want to go buy it and read it? Like, that doesn't make sense. Come on, people. So they want me to go promote this now too. Go
I
figure.
know. Oh, how long did it take you from the inception of that idea to somebody can purchase it? How long did that take?
Yeah, I'd say just about 10 months. I probably started last September, the idea last September, October. We just published it end of July, early August. So, and I'm still waiting on the hardcover because it's now, I'm just waiting for it to come in the mail to make sure what I've approved online actually looks like what I approved online. But yeah, so almost a full year that's going through. I had someone edit it, but they didn't quite have what I had in mind for the editing. So then it was looking for another editor. And yeah, it's a fun learning experience, but you do want a good product out there, especially when you have something that is as a sensitive of a subject. You want it to be factually accurate. So, you know, I've shown it to a few different police officers, firefighters, you know, the paramedic, that sort of thing, to make sure that what we're having is and not only just accurate, but relevant to today. Because I had a whole section on CPR, but CPR has changed. And then it was like, okay, maybe this is a little heavy for little kiddos. It's something we can note too. I have a checklist that I'm putting together now for the refrigerator, and that shows, you know, mom and dad to get CPR certified. There's so much you could put in, but you don't want to get overwhelming either, right? Like, these poor kids are going to be like, oh my God, I don't want to get out of bed in the morning. What's going to happen today? So it's having that fine line of, this is just to prepare. Hopefully, most people never need it.
Yeah, exactly. But you're prepared all the same. Yeah, I just this idea, Cheryl. I think you need to go to your local fire station and talk to them about buying a bunch of your books. And then they should be passing out those books when the schools and the homeschooling families come through in October for the fire prevention week. And what a great thing that they could give to the families as a gift from the fire department. And, you know, you could give them a bulk rate and get that book out there. That's just an idea that just popped into my head. And I'm like, gotta do that. You gotta do that.
That's
You
genius.
mentioned, oh, good. You mentioned an activity book. Can you just expand a little bit? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I created an activity book to go with it where I just kind of like matching up, like, for instance, this page, the firefighters, learning, you know, your color all the ones so you recognize the ones. This page is the nines. Like I said, when my son was 5, maybe even 6, he had a hard time distinguishing the 6 from the 9. So picking out all of the 9s. Let's see, a few other pages. We have mazes. We have copy work. There are, you know, practicing the phone numbers. You can kind of bubble in mom or dad's phone number here just to kind of get an idea. Of course, maybe they're not going to memorize it right from that, but it's a starting point. These pages, when to call 911, because that's something I didn't even know when I started writing the book. When do we call 911? There are pictures of different situations, some that you would call 911, but maybe if your friend won't share with you, that's not a 911 call to be made. But yeah, if you know, you witness a crime, sometimes people don't, I don't know, am I supposed to call them? Is that an emergency? Well, yeah. Or what if I call 911 by accident? That happened a lot in our house when I did put the landline in. I purchased a phone that had little pictures on the top that you could, you know, pop in. So I put on the speed dial 911 with a picture of an ambulance and police car, and then another one of my husband, and then another one for grandpa that lives nearby. But 911 got a few too many test calls, so I had to change the picture on that. But just so people are aware, that is an option of a phone you can get right on Amazon, and it does work through my internet. So if there were a storm or something where your internet is out, that wouldn't work, where like the old school landlines hardwired into the wall, those would obviously be best. You know, the options like that do exist. Most people just, we don't have a landline. Why would we? But there are, you know, it is beneficial when you have kids in the home. And the book also talks about, what neighbor do you trust? Because we don't talk to our neighbors like we used to back in the day. So what ones would you go to? Maybe you can have a conversation with that neighbor ahead of time. Hey, you're our safety go to, just so you're aware, if my kid ever comes here, that is, why. And, just to that'll make your child more comfortable with the situation. God forbid it ever arose.
Yeah. Oh, it's so fantastic. I'm so happy for you. I'm so proud of you for not putting this on the back burner, but making it a priority and just being an example of what's possible. I think when we can work from home, supporting our children, educating our children, and still pursuing our own passions, so many of our lives will feel better and richer than we ever could have imagined. Life looks different now. Like you just pointed out, all of these important medical things look different now. Emergency situations look different now, but school should look different now. Right? Our home relational experience should look different now. It's a different time. All of these things can look different and be better than ever. It's absolutely possible. So tell us, please, where can they find your book?
Yeah, we are right on Amazon. My website for the book, CherylDaley.com, can get you there, or you can just go on Amazon and search Let's Talk Emergencies, and both the paperback and the activity book are there. And then the hardcover will be there in the next week or so. As soon as I can see what that looks like in person. They take so long to ship to you when they send you author copies. I ended up buying just a couple of the regular Amazon priced books because I was like, I want it tomorrow. Yeah, I tried to make it as cheap as possible so that it was accessible to everybody. And with Amazon, at least you get the free shipping. I'm sure it'll be on the Barnes & Noble because as Ingram Spark does, but yeah, we were just sort of working one step at a time. So for me, it was like, well, the easiest way is Amazon. Not that I want to promote doing the large business. I much prefer the local stuff, but it was like, okay, how much can I learn about in one sitting? So we're slowly progressing to the better ways to just like bulk order, like you said, and be able to ship those out. I just didn't trust myself with holding all the books here and an emergency taking place, and then my 1,000 copies are gone. And, getting over to the post office and like mailing things out, that takes up a lot of time as well. So yeah, for Amazon right now, that is the easiest place to get it.
I will put a link in the show notes for that as well. But I agree, it's a very practical way of getting the book out there so that people can get it. And that's the whole point, is to get the book into the hands of all the families, for sure. Okay, one last question before I promise I'll let you go. But I'm just so curious, now that the little writing bug has bitten, what is next? Are you going to do more children's book? You mentioned a memoir. What's next for Cheryl Daley?
I'm going to really try to just concentrate on our homeschool for the fall, because I do feel like with all the sports, I also teach Zumba a couple nights a week in the fall and the spring. And then my son's in a few sports and my daughter's 2 now. So she's going to want to start getting into the homeschool, as she sees him do it. She loves copying everything her 6-year-old brother does. So I'm going to try to take a little bit of break and really concentrate on my kids for the fall. But after that, I would love to do a unit study on the Hudson River because I live right by it. I have gone over it hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times, and I never knew that this was anything special. We never learned about this in public school. Never took a trip to it in my schooling years, but we went on a homeschool trip to the Bronx Zoo, and one of the grandmothers on the bus was just talking about the history of the Hudson River. And I was like, that is so cool. We're going to get all the children's books I can find on the Hudson River. And one book in particular was just amazing. River of Dreams, it was called, and really broke down the history of the Hudson River. And I thought, oh, this would be so cool to add in certain things about the time period and how we went from the trade that happened. America would not be what it is today without the Hudson River. I mean, and all the American Revolution and all that took place up and down here. And I knew we had a lot of battlefields in our area. Again, my schools never took us there, but I was in kind of an inner city school, so maybe it was like a risk factor. I don't know, but there's just so much history to our upstate New York area. And I was like, all right, I'm going to do a unit study on this, because even people in California, their lives are different because the Hudson River existed in our country. So I'd love to do something like that. I'd love to finish the memoir one day. I was telling someone recently, I said, my father passed a year and a half ago, but I don't know that I can publish the memoir if my mother's still alive, because certain things you're like, I don't know how she'd feel about me talking about that. But I had an interesting childhood with my father. I grew up he had severe mental, like OCD and obsessive compulsive disorder with phobias. So we had to live our lives very differently. It reminds me of the book, The Glass Castle. And I think it's called Educated, I believe is the other one, where they kind of grew up with quirky, almost dark, but set in a funny tone way of childhood. Like my father, we couldn't wear black in our house. And I just kind of thought, I didn't know why, but to him it represented death. And so if I came walking in the house, he'd be like, what color is that? And my mom would be in the back, tell him it's navy. And it's just this like crazy stuff. He didn't want money in the house because it had germs on it, and because it goes passed through people. And so like we couldn't bring our money in the house, but I just assumed nobody could, right? Like nobody wanted germs in their house. So if my friends came over, he'd tell my mother to go steal their purse from my bedroom and put it on the front porch. And like my friends would be like, I think your mom stole my purse. Here I am. It's like an 8-year-old kid, like, I don't know, goes on the front porch. Why'd you bring it in the house? And, but they're thinking this is crazy. So it was a lot of stuff like that. Yeah, that will definitely be in the works. I actually went on a memoir writing retreat to Washington State at the very beginning of COVID. It was like I was there in March of 2020, and we worked a lot on putting my memoir together. So it's like it's all together. It just has to be written in a fluid way that's, makes sense. It's one of those things that it's heavy too. So to write it, you don't want to get yourself in a dark place either. So it will come out. Funny thing enough is this is just a cute, kind of cool story. I never remember writing as a child, and like you would appreciate this as a writer. Never remember journaling at all. I wrote songs, but I never remember keeping a diary or a journal. And I live now with my husband in a house that is nowhere near my parents' house or anything. I don't know how it got here, but I found a Trapper Keeper, just to age myself, full of pages that apparently I journaled as a child that I don't remember. And this is while I was doing my memoir writing a couple years ago. And I found it's the most bizarre thing. I don't remember writing it, but it's like stuff all about my childhood. That was pretty cool.
That's a treasure. The insight to your 10-year-old self or your 12-year-old, however old you may have been, as you're saying, what you're saying about your family, it's like such a great example of so many of us who grew up thinking abnormal was normal, right? How would you have known that not everybody puts their purses on the front porch? Abnormal was normal to you. And it's not until we have enough life experiences that we start to say, actually, that was abnormal behavior on my dad's side. I already am looking forward to that Hudson River unit study from you, and I want the memoir from you. And I'm just so delighted, Cheryl, that our roads, our paths have crossed. We've intersected with one another. You've already enriched my life, and I'm just excited for all that you have going on. And as I mentioned in the introduction, Cheryl is a podcaster and a great podcaster. I love your interviews. I just think you're a natural interviewer, and you ask all the questions. Like there's nothing off the table for you. And I love that. They're just raw and honest. And as I'm listening, I'm always like, oh, I hope she asks. And yep, she asked that. So you're a great podcaster too. So for all of you listening, please get her book and be sure to check out Homeschool How To podcast and go listen to her on the regular because I really think she'll bless your life. So thank you, Cheryl, so much for being here. Is there anything else you want to say before you go?
Oh, just thank you so much, Melissa. You have been a gift as well. Like that little cheerleader that where I'm like, I don't think I'm a good writer or, there's nothing extraordinary about me. I spent the last 16 years in a cubicle working for the government. I literally felt my brain melting away. So it's so nice to hear someone that is actually a writer, a legit writer saying, no, your work is good. Keep going. So that is, I think, God or the creator, whatever is out there that is kind of putting us here, puts things in our life for a reason. I definitely think that he had our paths cross on purpose. So I'm thankful for that.
Thank you. Me too. I feel the same way. So thank you everybody for tuning in this week. Go check those show notes for those very important links. Well, thanks so much for tuning in and listening this week. Hey, if this was something that you found valuable, don't forget you want to subscribe or follow so that every time a new episode is dropped, you'll be the first to know. And hey, before you go, if you are looking to get some of this academic writing under your belt and outsourced so that it's one less thing, freeing you up to enjoy more time with your family, hey, you're going to want to head over to writeonweb.com to see what kinds of resources and materials I have available for you. I will look forward to seeing you there, and I will look forward to seeing you here in our next episode. Right on.